Adam, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing? It's good to catch up with you.
Yes, and you're calling from the Twin Cities?
Calling from the Twin Cities. Yep. Calling from Linden Hills basement co-working space.
All right, so quick introduction, Adam, of your name and what you do.
Yeah. So we met about, I don't know, 15 years ago. We were in a Chinese language meetup group. At the time, I was working at Target, kind of just in merchandising and logistics at that point. I then had a friend who had a furniture company, and he was like, "Hey, we need someone to be in China and manage this operation." So very early in my career, and I was not prepared for this, I got the chance to kind of go lead an international operation in China. Did that for about 2.5, 3 years, and then started working at Amazon. At Amazon for 8 years in various capacities. And my wife and I, we decided to move back to the Twin Cities in July of 2020, which was an interesting time to move back to the Twin Cities. But we love it here now, and that brings us to what I'm doing now. In 2022, my son was put on this wait list for after school care. And I didn't know this before I became a parent, how constrained childcare is, how constrained this industry is. And there are a couple unique factors about this specific part of childcare. So, when I was a kid, I just remember like I'd get off the bus around 4:30. That the schools were later then, and the high schoolers went earlier. Well, that's switched. So now there's a lot of studies that say high schoolers need more sleep. So high schoolers go to school later, and elementary school kids go to school earlier. My kids get on the bus at 7. They get off the bus around 2:30. What does that mean for working parents? I mean, if you're a two working parent family or a single parent family who works, that means you're pretty screwed. And so in 2022, another thing happened, we were right post-COVID. You had a huge amount of retirements. You had the inability for the schools to backfill those retirements. And so you had a huge shortage of people. And so I was one of the 700 families who was put on this wait list. And we used to go to these meetings, I call them the angry parent meetings, where a lot of parents were just yelling about how this cannot be possible. And the school administration just felt helpless. They felt like they couldn't do anything. I was in a unique position because at the time I was leading Amazon's middle mile recruiting and management program. So middle mile is like the 53-foot trucks that transport goods from a facility to a facility. And I was very adept at how to recruit in high volumes and maintain a good personalization aspect to the program. I think that's what I'd call one of my superpowers, is how to scale and remain personal. And so I reached out to the local school district, Edina Public Schools. They said, "Hey, do you guys need help recruiting?" And luckily they said yes. And that's how my business started.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's let me tell me a little bit more about Radar, what you guys do, the mission, and et cetera.
Yeah, our mission is to get communities to work. It's right on my shirt right here. The problem is that our public sector institutions, school districts, parks and recs departments, law enforcement, even you could include hospitals in there, they're not keeping up with the paradigms of recruiting. They're using old paradigms that say, everyone wants to work for us, so we're going to put these barriers up to keep candidates away from hiring managers. And that's not the world we're living in now. And so Radar essentially breaks down those barriers. We make sure that a lot of people know that you're hiring. We make the application process abundantly easy. We have a team of people, mostly local here in the Twin Cities, who reach out to candidates quickly and get to talk to them. We get to screen them. And then we streamline the whole process. I swear to God, when I started working with school districts, It was like they were going to work in the CIA in terms of the number of hoops they had to go through. And these are $16 an hour, 3-hour jobs. You know, we help that. We start with a candidate and work backwards and say, what should the experience be?
That's so interesting. And I think back of how we met, I think it was about 10 years ago, as you said, in Twin Cities. And I think you were somewhat out of college or a few years out of college. I think you went to school in Washington, D.C. I think you studied Chinese. I think that was another thing we bonded over, our interest in China. And then you were working in Target, I think in supply chain. And then I remember, like you said, around 2015, you left or you were leaving to Seattle to work for Amazon. So that was a big company. You worked there for 8 years, but it wasn't everything you thought of in terms of the city, having a family, et cetera. Is that what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the difference between Minneapolis or Minnesota in general and Seattle is that most people you meet in Minnesota have roots in Minnesota, and roots build culture. And most people in Seattle that we knew were transient. They were going from job to job, or they moved there for a job. And I think we're like, my wife and I are one of the few people in Minnesota who have no defined roots in Minnesota. Yeah. And so it was nice to be in a place where it was hard to break in at first, but once we broke in, we were accepted as part of the community. Yeah. And Seattle, we just didn't feel that pull of community, and that's why we made the decision to move back.
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
Cost of living.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's much more affordable than Twin Cities. Yeah. You got these neighborhoods, the cultural arts. It's very family-oriented. That's what I miss. Very interesting. So you transferred from doing supply chain, doing logistics, and for a big famous company, people would say, wow, that'd be a dream job for me. But then ultimately you decided with your wife and kids to move back to the Twin Cities.
We did, yeah. And I still worked at Amazon remotely for a time period, about 2 years, when we moved back. That was during COVID, when there was no expectation to be in the office. But, you know, I would say you still feel, when you're working at a big multinational company, and especially Amazon, which is built on scale, you do lose some of that community aspect. Like, I could have stayed in my house all day on a computer screen looking at people and never felt connected to my community. Mm-hmm. And what I love about what I do now is, like this morning, I just delivered donuts to one of our school districts that we work with. They just hired their 200th employee through Radar. Wow. Like, that's an experience, that's a human experience that I never would have gotten if I still worked at Amazon. Sure. I love being an entrepreneur. I don't know if I can ever go back to not being an entrepreneur at this point. Right. So I really hope this works out.
Interesting. So when you came back to the Twin Cities, you didn't have an idea that you were going to be an entrepreneur. You just kind of stumbled across this problem, tried to solve it, and then here you are.
This happened just kind of naturally and fortuitously, that it was a personal problem that I happened to have a lot of expertise in, and the right connections, and the right time, and the right community. I'm not sure this would have worked in Seattle, because Seattle doesn't have a high expectation for public service. There's, you know, when we lived in Seattle, there was just an expectation that there are childcare shortages. In Minnesota, the expectation is our school districts need to solve this. And that is a huge difference.
Sure. All right, so I know you got to get going, so I'll just give you the quick soapbox if you want to get your word out, what you're looking for, and then how people can connect to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you see areas where your community is being impacted by staffing shortages, email me, adam@radartalentsolutions.com. We like to help. We like to get communities to work, and we appreciate the opportunity to chat here today.
That's great. No, that's wonderful, Adam. I really appreciate meeting back up with you, and I hopefully see you in person in the Twin Cities in a few short years.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully before then.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks again, Adam.
Take care. See you.
All right. All right.